Good morning, guys. I hope everyone is doing well. It is Thursday, the 9th of April, and this is your daily market outlook for today. Before we get into the charts, I just want you to understand that the content on these videos and inside of the Discord is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor, and nothing shared in my Discord and videos should be considered financial or investment advice. Trading and investing always involves risk, and you should do your own research before making any financial decisions. Also, understand that any past performances discussed on these videos does not guarantee future results. You are always responsible for your own financial decisions. Okay, with that being said, let's jump straight into the charts and see what is going on. So quickly going into today, obviously Thursday, the 9th of April, we have red folder news with the US dollar at 230. So that is something to keep an eye on going into today, of course. And then tomorrow we have CPI, which is obviously a big one. So yeah, obviously CPI tomorrow with the US dollar. So I expect volume coming into the markets heavily tomorrow with that CPI. Now, going into the charts, let's see what's going on. Obviously, we've been melting away on a dollar from this daily supply area that we have here. We've now broken this low here. If you guys obviously remember and follow the daily time frame, we had market creating this range here. We had this higher high and this higher low. We then dipped into this area, and then that should have gone and broke a new higher high. Now, as you can see, we didn't quite do that. Market coming to this daily supply, and now supply is fully in control with the daily time frame. So from a daily perspective, eventually, we will want to see this area of daily supply met. But of course, right now we don't have to worry about that. But eventually we will see market have some sort of shift over the long term, and then potentially get that daily to go and break that new daily lower low eventually. So that is something to keep an eye on. Let me just mark this out just quickly, 1 second. So yeah, new range on the daily time frame, something to definitely keep in mind for what am I doing for the future. Um, so yeah, let's jump down to the 4 hour time frame and see what is going on. Now, of course, in order for us to get the retracement, on a daily time frame to then, eventually have that potential breakdown, what we need to see is, of course, some sort of reason to give the dollar to go bullish. Now, looking at the scenario on the dollar, what I can see is I'm just going to quickly go to the 1 hour and then we'll come back to the four. This area here is our 1 hour demand area. If we just look to the left, this is an area which was unmitigated. Let me just move that. So this candle here, let's just make it this last sell candle that caused the movement up with the imbalance above is where the market is currently at. So it's not a coincidence when I teach people supply and demand, candles. It's not a coincidence that this is just randomly reacting from there. This is how the markets move. So we're inside of this 1 hour demand area. We're now getting that bullishness away. The one thing I'm just keeping in mind is we have this level of 4 hour demand area with some imbalance above from a 4 hour. So, one perspective could be we dip and then we get that real movement on from the dollar. That is one scenario, of course, in which can happen. Going into the 1 hour time frame, you can see that the 1 hour is pretty corrective. It's pretty, clean from a 1 hour perspective down here. There's not a clear 1 hour, demand area in which, would give us a massive reason why we would want to look to, long the market, well, dip the market and then long the market from here. The one thing I can obviously notice is we had this, Asian was bullish. We didn't really break the high. We left this, last sell candle that caused this movement up was our, 1 hour demand area, which as you can see is where the market came back into and then slowly started to get that move away. So 1 hour is a little bit tricky in regards to the fact that it's not as clean as we would like. If I just jump down to the lower time frames, what I can see is of course, market has reacted from, this 1 hour demand. Ideally, yes, we have come away from this area of 15-minute demand here. But the one thing that's just sticking out to me at this moment in time is this area here. We have this 15-minute and 30-minute demand candle. Now, what I'm, keeping my eye on is the fact that is this areas here all early inducement, this area and the bullishness that's happening, is that early inducement for people to long the dollar? And then could we potentially maybe see the market dip into this, filling that imbalance, take out these equal lows, take out the stop losses, take out any early buyers, and then get that move away. That could be a potential that does happen. Or, of course, if that doesn't happen, what we can obviously then just say is, well, market reacted from this area here as a 15-minute demand area. We're now in this 15-minute demand, but we do have this fresh one here. So, could market then potentially from the other side, instead of dipping too low into this one, it might just potentially dip into this one, fill in this imbalance, and then get that move away for the dollar. So, they're my two scenarios pretty much for the dollar. Well, three scenarios, which is a little bit annoying, but we have, of course, the 4-hour demand area, which would take out the Asian lows, or we have 50-minute demand area, 50-minute demand area. So it'd be interesting to see what happens going into the rest of today. I am yawning. Pardon me. So moving on to the major pairs, let's have a look at what's going on. You can see that obviously, as we will know, we have this area here failed to obviously go and create a new daily lower low. We come into this demand area, and then we've had this bullishness away. So we have a new daily range, and that daily range on the Euro USD would be from this daily higher high to this daily higher low. So for me, let me just mark this daily change of trend here. So ideally, of course, if we're looking at the daily time frame on Euro USD, then eventually we do want to see this level here met, this level being our daily demand area. Um, so of course, yes, what we would like to see eventually is if market give us that lower time frame shift into this demand, rebalance itself, and then get that, bullishness away from there. That is obviously one scenario from, what we can keep an eye on. So that is what we want to see from the daily. Now, in order for that to happen, that would mean that we need the lower time frames to, of course, align with the daily time frame. So with that being said, um, let's have a look at what is going on. I'm just going to quickly remove that from the time. Yep, okay. So at this moment in time, I was looking at areas here in which I would like to see where we're reacting from. I couldn't quite see anything that aligned with the US dollar. So one thing that I can, sorry, one thing that I can, so one thing that I can obviously see is we have, if you look to the left, a little bit of imbalance and a little and a 1 hour supply area which hadn't been mitigated. Now, of course, we haven't quite reached that. As you can see, we didn't quite reach into that at this moment in time. But again, the dollar is the main currency, and the dollar has reached that 1 hour demand area. So, looking at this scenario from a 4 hour, what I can see is 4 hour obviously has a little bit of imbalance above this area here and this 4 hour supply area. So from one scenario, could we see Euro USD dip into this 4 hour supply and then get that movement away? That would be one, case that we can obviously keep an eye on. And then going into the 1 hour time frame, can we see anything different? Well, the main thing that sticks out to me just at this moment in time is um, and why I didn't trade yesterday was we've obviously now broke these official lows. We had 1 hour higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and then we've obviously broke down, to the downside. Now again, same scenario um for the dollar, this is pretty corrective. This is pretty corrective, so nothing is clean as I would usually like to see for like a 1 hour supply area. So that obviously makes me have a look at what's going on in that lower time frame. Now, of course, first thing that does stick out to me is if I just quickly go to the 15 minute, we have this level of 15-minute supply area that does stick out to me. We have these equal highs pretty much here. So liquidity is available. And then if we just zoom in, you can also see that we have left some sort of imbalance, a little bit of that 15-minute imbalance just below that 15-minute supply area. So with that being said, oh, sorry, that 15-minute imbalance below the 15-minute supply area. So what I'm ideally seeing or potentially looking for is could market, come up, tap into this 15-minute supply and then get that short away. That's ideally what I'm keeping my eye on for, this London session at this moment in time. Let's see what happens. Obviously, this has been, has it been mitigated? We do have some imbalance left. We do have liquidity available. So yeah, let's keep an eye on this for Euro USD. Now, going into GBP USD, pretty much the same scenario. Um, so I'm going to quickly just go over the daily and the other. It's not as clean as Euro USD on a daily, but one thing we can keep an eye on is we have now officially, for me, broken that. Let me just get this up. We have now officially broken that daily trend. So for me, daily higher high, and this is my daily higher low. Now, the reason for that is if you look at this, you can see that market broke down, market pulled back, market failed to go and what? Failed to go and break a new daily low, and then we've had this change of trend here. So, following the dollar, following everything that we can see, that aligns, it allows me to look at GBP USD and say this is a new daily range. So, this being our daily change of trend, and of course, we're coming out of this valid monthly demand candle. Now, going into the lower time frames, well, quickly before, of course, aligning with what we always do. This is a daily demand area in which we can see market potential come into. If that is the case, then we need to see, lower time frame trend, and then eventually go and see if we can get that daily higher high eventually. So that is what I've got for the daily time frame with GBP USD. Now going into the lower time frames, the 4 hour and the 1 hour, what can we see with GBP USD? Well, with the Great British Pound US dollar, we can see that we obviously have, clear for our demand areas below, which we're still waiting for market to come in. We have institutional candles with a lot of imbalance. So ideally, what would be amazing is of course we have market structure come into these areas, fill them in, and then eventually, see if we can get that bullishness away. So that is my first thought when it comes to, GBP USD. Now, one thing I notice is from GU, there's nothing clear as I'd like to why market is obviously reacting like it is with the dollar, apart from the fact that we have taken out this high, which is a significant high, of course, and use this as liquidity. We've obviously punched above, and then obviously that could give a reason why the market wants to obviously dip lower. Now, looking at the 4 hour just quickly again, this is our 4 hour supply. Could market potentially fill in this imbalance, come into the supply, and then get that move away? That could be a scenario with GBP USD. And then we could look to obviously short GBP USD into the lower ends of these demand areas. Now, going into the 1 hour, what can we see on the one? Well, the one is not as clear as we would like, as we mentioned with Euro USD. But you can see that we obviously had the internal structure here. We've broken this low, which is this one here, which obviously means that market has had that 1 hour change of trend. Now, what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that we could potentially look for obviously shorts into that downside to fill in the imbalance. Now, looking at this scenario, we do have some sort of little imbalance here. So let's just mark this out. And this candle being a potential 1 hour supply area. Now, a little bit of imbalance above this high here, which is obviously good. It is a little bit more cleaner on the 30-minute and 15-minute. Let me just get rid of this 1 hour for 1 second. You can see that what we have in this scenario is we obviously have imbalance to fill. This would be a 15-minute supply. Obviously, right now, this is a 30-minute. So ideally, whichever favors you, you go with, of course. But what I'd be looking to keep an eye on is we still have Asian high intact. We obviously have these equal highs, not equal highs, but these liquidity highs here. We also have imbalance from, this 15-minute to here available. So, could market potentially, make its way up, tap into that demand area, into that imbalance, and then, take out these highs and then obviously get that movement away for shorts. That is a potential which, I'm looking out for going into this London session. So yeah, that is definitely something to keep an eye on, guys, 100%. Going into NZUSD, I don't like the look at NZUSD. I don't even know if I'm going to cover this at this moment in time. Just being completely honest. Um, I prefer the look of AUD USD, and I'll explain why. Because NU at this moment in time, what I'm basically going to wait for is I'm going to wait for a significant low broke like this. Um, in fact, let's just do it. Let's have a look. Let's see what's going on. Daily time frame on NZUSD. We obviously had daily change of trend. We've had daily break of structure. We've had another daily change of trend here. So, for me, we have a new daily range, which would be this area being our daily. Well, it was a daily lower low, and we obviously have this as our new daily higher high for me. Of course, because we had that change of trend. Now, looking at the daily time frame, ideally, I want to see market come into this daily demand area below. And filling, these imbalances that we do have, obviously this big imbalance from this institutional candle. Now, in order for that to happen, the same scenario would be, of course, as we always talk about, we would need the lower time frame to give us that change of trend, and then obviously we can make a decision from this daily demand if it's going to go long and break a new higher high. Now, going into the four, going into the 4 hour, what can we see? Just quickly, let me just do that. But what can we currently see from a 4 hour? Well, we haven't really looked as clean as the other ones. For me personally, I would like to see a bit more, movement down. And we obviously have demand areas, below here, which we can obviously target, for instance, for them potential longs eventually, a lot of imbalance to fill. But looking at the 1 hour, the 1 hour tells me a little bit more, and that just basically indicates that if you look at the 1 hour, you can see that we had obviously higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and then obviously this area did break below the here, so you can class that as obviously a 1 hour change of trend, which does align with um the other 1 second currency pairs and obviously the dollar as well. It's not as clean as the break we would like to see. So at this moment in time, what am I trying to look for in here? There's nothing as clear on the 1 hour that I can, see. So I'm gonna have to utilize the lower time frames to see if we can see anything significant. Um, and at this moment in time, we can't. We've taken out obviously highs of here. Very choppy behavior, of course, in this area. Um, so yeah, I'll be real. My favorable would be the other pairs than NZUSD. I wouldn't like to even participate in this just at this moment in time for me personally. So I'm not going to cover the lower time frames. Going into AUD USD, let's see what is going on. We'll look at the daily time frame again, just quickly. And obviously a little bit different, but you can see that market structure. We obviously had this pullback, failed to go and create a new low low, and then we've had this bullishness from here. So, looking at this scenario, could this now potentially be where market just carries on bullish? That is obviously a scenario that we can keep an eye on, of course. So for me personally, if the market carries on bullish like we are analyzing on the dollar being bearish eventually on a daily time frame, then that will be our next daily demand area. Um, and that's where I'll be looking to, see market come back into and then potentially going long it from here. So that is what I'm looking for with a daily time frame. Now going into the 4 hour time frame. I really like the look of AUD USD, probably my favorite one today. I'll discuss why. But just quickly, if we can short from here, this would be the next day 4 hour demand area that I'd be keeping my eye on for then to potentially look for the longs. If not, it would be this area here. So looking at the 1 hour, it aligns a lot with, for me anyway, it aligns a lot with the dollar. We have this, let me just look at it from the naked eye. We have this supply area here with imbalance below, which is, not been mitigated. You can see now we have this area as our 1 hour supply. So market has, come back into that 1 hour supply, which does align with, dollar coming into this 1 hour demand area, which is obviously a positive. And then looking at this scenario, you can see that we've had, pretty clear structure away, breaking that, change the trend, lower high, lower low. Market has been, trading lower. Now, of course, looking at this just quickly, I can see that the next area of supply for me anyway, and the one I would be this area of supply here. This would be my 1 hour supply area, in which I'll be looking for AUD USD, which is pretty much at now to short from here. If we just again look at this, yep. It has just tapped into that 1 hour supply, so we could get that movement away from for AUD USD. If I do go into the lower time frames, that's the 1 hour supply. Let me just remove that a sec. In fact, no, let's keep that on the higher time frames. Minutes. Okay. If you look at the 15-minute, I do like this 15-minute supply candle here. Just being real with you guys, we do have some sort of imbalance left as well, just below that 15-minute supply area, which is here. So, ideally, everything seems pretty corrective. From if you look from obviously this scenario here, 15-minute supply melted away. Then we pulled back into the 15-minute supply area here, which you can actually refine it to that, sorry. Then we started to just trend beautifully downwards. Now, this area didn't get mitigated. We still have obviously an imbalance above. So ideally, what I would like to see is AUD USD dip above, filling that imbalance, tap into that supply, and then get that move away. To the downside. So that is what I would ideally like to see with AUD USD. Let's see, obviously, if that happens or not. So going into the other pairs, USD CHF, let's have a look at what she is doing. You can see the market has broke below this low here, and that indicates to me that we could potentially be obviously looking for shorts long term on the daily because higher high, this area here should have broke this and created a new high. We failed to do that, and now we've obviously had that change of trend. So for me, personally, this would be my daily lower high, and this would be my new daily lower low. Let me just get rid of this arrow. And then this would be where the daily change of trend has obviously happened. So yeah, looking at this scenario, if the dollar carries on, obviously short-term bullish into that daily supply to then go obviously into this daily supply to then go short, then what we would expect with USD CHF is pretty much the same scenario. Can we see market come into this level of daily supply here? And then from there, of course, shorting long term. But at this moment in time, we are obviously looking to get into that daily supply, which would mean that, what can we possibly see on this lower time frame? Well, I'm going to go to the 1 hour and show you this area here. But just quickly, we did actually take this low as well, which is a positive. Just bear with me for 1 second. So when this hurries up, my apologies. Okay, so we're taking that low and we're still reacted out of this level of demand on the lower time frame. What are you doing? Bottom. Okay, and yeah, 4 hour, we obviously have this 4 hour area below. If market decides it wants to come into the extreme level here, that would be a 4 hour demand area where we can obviously then potentially see if market then moved away from here. That would be a scenario to look out for. Looking at the 1 hour, it's nothing as clear as I would like to obviously look for, as you can see. Apart from obviously this 4 hour demand area, of course, if you go to the lower time frames, yeah, it's still nothing as clear as I would like. So I think the favorable area would be this 4 hour demand for USD CHF. And then of course if we get that break above, create a new high, we might have a cleaner 1 hour range to obviously then look for, more longs with USD CHF. So keep an eye out on that. USD Japanese yen. Before we move on, actually, let me just quickly show you this 1 hour demand area we're reacting from. This 1 hour demand area taking a low as well. Now, USD Japanese yen has been moving a lot more cleaner and more bullishness on the lower time frames than USD CHF. So, second, so looking at this scenario, we are still in this daily range, of course, but if the dollar, has basically broke this low, and if the dollar carries on shorting from the daily supply, then I expect the US dollar Japanese yen to carry on from this daily supply area as well, long term. Now, of course, jumping down to the four, what can we see? Um, Obviously, USD Japanese yen was pretty ugly. It was extremely ugly in this supply area. It was so choppy for so long. It then obviously taken out these highs, filled in that imbalance above this supply, and then got this move away. Now, looking at this scenario, I would ideally want to see, this level of 4 hour supply area met, where then it could be the potential for long-term shorts, maybe if it aligns with the dollar. We are reacting out of this 4 hour demand area, which aligns with the dollar reacting from this 1 hour demand area. So that is, everything perfect from there. Everything makes sense. We had a little bit of imbalance with below as well, which I'm going to refine this now to here. You guys will be able to see it hopefully. We had a little bit of imbalance here and this 4 hour demand. Now, going into the 1 hour, what can we see? Well, you can see that 1 hour's been pretty correct here. We had obviously this lower low, lower high. We had a change of trend here. That means that obviously then bullishness was happening. We have higher high, higher low, higher high. So market is pretty corrective at this moment in time. If we just mark some of these areas out, you can see when we obviously had this institutional candle, this is where market came back into in Asian. You can see institutional candle come back in. Then we had obviously Asian go bullish. Markets coming to this little trap area here. Ideally, I would have wanted to see this area below met, but we didn't quite get that. So yeah, and then obviously what's happened at this moment in time is market has then come into this area here and just got bullishness. So look, it's not the cleanest from a 1 hour looking at, the USD Japanese yen. It really isn't. But if you go down to the 30 minute or 50 minute, you can see it a little bit more clearer. If we just get rid of this noise at this moment in time, bear with me for 1 second. Minutes. You can obviously see we have this big old area. You could have refined it to this area here. And that's where market reacted from. And then obviously at this moment in time, we're just reacting from this 15-minute area here. And that's where market is currently. So, I'm expecting the bullishness to carry on from here with, USD Japanese yen. And then, yeah, obviously just keeping in mind what the dollar is doing. So if we can carry on, that would be amazing. And then we can make a decision for, you know, USD Japanese yen when we fill in the rest of this imbalance and get into this 4 hour supply area. And inside that 4 hour supply area, we can see we have a pretty clear 1 hour supply area as well. So yeah, let's see what goes on for the rest of today and see what happens with the major pairs and the US dollar. But other than that, guys, that is the daily market outlook for today. I appreciate every single person for tuning in, and we will catch up inside of the Discord as always. Take care and God bless.